big crowd tonight, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is a meeting to replace last week's meeting when you couldn't get to this part of the world. So the island of Eureka has been liberated and we can move on with business. I'd like a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on tonight's agenda? In that case, the motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That passes. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for April 20th. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those minutes? All right, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? There we go. We have one abstention. I need a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes for April 27th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions?
I abstain.
We have one abstention. Thank you. The next item would be Patron Comments. I don't believe we have any this evening, so we'll move on from that. Next one is Superintendent and Board Comments, and I will turn that over to our Superintendent, Dr. Knost.
Thank you and good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
Obviously a less than normal week last week and quite a trying week, but I want to editorialize just a bit and say that, I remember when Chris and Tim and so many other people, when we were sandbagging on Sunday, and a parent said to me, what if we do all this and it wasn't needed? And I just looked around, I said, look at the community, look at the sense of community. And many people in this room ended up, whether it was Old Town Fenton, Old Town Eureka, or private individual residents where people had issues, and that community was witnessed all week long. And I said to my wife when things finally started going in the right direction, I said, I have no clue what's going on in the world. I have no clue what's on Fox News or CNN. I have no clue of anything except all the community that I've seen in the last week. And that was, in that regard, a very uplifting thing amidst a really trying week. So kudos to just everyone that was involved. But with all that, we got a good amount of good news in that I had submitted to the State Department on Monday a request for forgiveness of those days. It depends how you look at it. The state requires that we go to school for 1,044 hours a year. That happens to work out to be about 174 days. And in recent years, they've really departed away from the focus on the days, and they've stayed with the hours. So when Dan Steinbrigge and I talked about the actual minutes, in reality, if you did the calculation down to the hours, I think we were okay. But I didn't want to chance it. So we still submitted a request for waiver of that one day for the Eureka Quadrant, which was last Monday. And we heard back from the Commissioner's office yesterday that not only were they excusing that one day, they were just excusing all 5 days for the rest of our school district too. So I guess the rationale there is that if there's some other unforeseen thing that were to happen, or let's just say we had a May snowstorm or something, that our snow days would still be intact. So I appreciate that they did it that way. Either way, it's all good, and the last day of school for students will be May 25th as originally scheduled. Another really great news piece, because of their efforts in character education, we know we have a really strong focus on character education in the Rockwood School District. The following 6 Rockwood schools are added to our list of National Schools of Character. This is for the year 2017. Green Pines, Kerrs Mill, Kellison, Stanton, Wild Horse, and our Rockwood Early Childhood Education. Being designated a National School of Character recognizes the hard work schools put in to develop strong character education programs, creating caring school climates, and preparing students to be future leaders who care about their community. So we are extremely excited. We're not showing anything on that, are we? No, I didn't think so. There's a little link on the bottom. So congratulations to all those schools. You remember last year, the Rockwood School District actually received national level recognition for character education. So it's great to see the individual schools following suit. And some more good news. The Washington Post ranks high schools in a category called America's Most Challenging. And in the state of Missouri, only 20 high schools made the cut this time around. Happy to report that all 4 Rockwood high schools, Marquette, Eureka, Rockwood, Summit, and Lafayette, were included in that list. America's Most Challenging High Schools ranks schools through an index formula that's a pretty simple ratio. And, you know, a lot of times I say that when we are recognized, whether they're by magazines or newspapers nationally, sometimes I think we need to keep that in check. We need to understand the zip codes that we represent. We need to understand the kind of support our students have. And also, we want all kids to succeed, whether the kids in Rockwood or kids in Parkway or anywhere else. We want them to succeed. But this is a pretty simple ratio, and I think it's a pretty substantial thing. The ratio is that the number of advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and advanced international certificate of education tests given at a school year each year. So they just take how many of those tests are you given, and they divide it by the number of seniors who graduated that year. And that determines what they feel are the most challenging schools. And it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that you have that number of students being tested on those nationally normed tests. So it's a pretty neat thing. So congratulations to the students and staff at all 4 Rockwood high schools. I'm going to run full circle back to where I started mentioning the flood. For obvious reasons, we know last week was definitely a difficult one for a lot of families, a lot of businesses, and a lot of people inside of our school district. And probably, I've mentioned this a few times in groups. I'm going to keep mentioning it because I think it's worthy of that. All of us, whatever our role is, we have different levels of stress in something like a natural disaster. But probably one of the hardest nights of my career as an administrator was Tuesday evening when Chris and Tim and I boated out of Eureka High School, and we left 4 of our staff members there. And it's you know, I don't know if it sounds as big of a deal now, but you get caught up in that when you're leaving one of your campuses by a boat, and the sun's going down, and you know the water's coming up, and you get 4 guys there to battle that water. And I'm just, these guys were so humble about it, and through the leadership of Preston Vaden, who is our master plumber, these humble guys just did what they could. I think they were a little upset because it wasn't a complete save. We did have some water that get in, as we know, and we lost Gym A floor again. But we had a record flood of all time, and we have probably less than half the damage of the last flood. And everybody deserves credit. Everybody that put sand in a sandbag and stacked it on a wall, worked with us, all of that helped. But when it came to that night, had we not had that building manned by those 4 guys and their efforts, we still would have sustained probably equal damage. And the brain power of what to do with those pump systems and just the hard labor, these guys never got to sit. They never got to sit. It was hard for them to figure out how to use the restroom. Plus the restroom started backing up, so it was more of an issue. But anyway, Alex threw a press conference together, and I thought it was really great that if you were media in St. Louis or in the area, you showed up. They showed up. And so these guys were highlighted. I think Channel 4 did about the best job of all of them, and we're going to just play that really quick for you.
In Valley Park, take a close look. All lanes of 141 have reopened within the last hour.
That stretch has been shut down for more than a week because of flooding. We will check in with a live crew there on the ground shortly, but first.
There's no doubt about it. They saved, in my opinion, this school from much more devastation than what occurred.
It's hard to tell from images like these, but flood damage at Eureka High School could have been much worse.
4 men are credited with fighting back the floodwater. News 4's Ray Preston is live in Eureka detailing their efforts.
Well, this is the main gymnasium here at Eureka High School. This is where the floodwaters did get, and they got onto the gym floor. You can see it's been torn up, and they are in the process of replacing it. But the district says that while water did get into this part of the building, there are other parts of the building that stayed dry thanks to the work of some very dedicated employees. Around the high school, crews are trying to get things cleaned up, back into shape, but there isn't as much work to do compared to the last major flood, in part thanks to these 4 men.
We have a shop of tradesmen that carry a mentality, I think, of moving forward and fortitude, get it done and get it done right.
Overnight Tuesday into early Wednesday morning, when the river crest hit Eureka, the 4 stayed on campus, trying their best to fight off the floodwaters.
It was so intimidating. I mean, water was coming through drains, it was coming through the courtyard sidewalk, which I've never seen anything like that before, and I've been doing this a long time.
The door over here that I was manning, it was actually coming up through the concrete.
Plans had to change at a moment's notice.
When the water started coming up the sewers, we had to redirect attention to that for the purpose of saving other parts of the school.
At a certain point, we got overran, we got work down, and there was just no way to keep the water out.
But they did manage to keep enough out to save parts of the building. The superintendent says the district just went through the worst flooding in its history, but suffered only half the amount of damage compared to the last flood.
And they did it on no sleep until we could bring a boat in here the next morning to pick them up.
We're a team, it's a team effort. We believe in Rockwood, and Rockwood believes in us, so it goes hand in hand. You know, it's my job, so that's how you look at it.
And they said there was a lot of praying and cursing that night, and they said it got more intense as the evening went on. We asked if they were referring to the praying or the cursing. They said pretty much both. Reporting live from Eureka High School, Ray Preston, News 4.
That's awesome.
I think Preston,
Did you mute?
Preston credited Brian Paul for the praying and took the heat for the cursing himself. So, but anyway, kudos to those guys, and we've had some people step out to recognize them a little bit in some ways. What can we do for them? And so far, somebody's offered them some really nice tickets to a Cardinal game, so they're all going together as a team later in the season. They had a number of games to pick. I thought it was interesting that they found the one night they could go was late in September when we're playing the Cubs. So they're going to do that. We're going to get them a night out, good dinner. And that's, to me, people say what makes Rockwood special. That right there is an example of what makes Rockwood special. Those guys, the heart and the character that they represent and the humbleness is just phenomenal. So kudos to them, and that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Any other board members have comments tonight? I certainly want to welcome our newest board member, Tammy. Welcome aboard. People weren't all here yet, but she was sworn in this evening just before closed session, and we welcome you and thank you for your willingness to be on the board.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
Any other board comments?
I'll say something that, I think it's one thing, first of all, you did a great job during the very trying times during the flood. He's the face of Rockwood, which is great. But, I know there are 2 gentlemen in this room that, did an awful lot too. So Tim Rooney and Chris Friend, thank you very much for all you did as well. And, I'm not a very emotional person when it comes to kind of tearing up. But when I was in Fenton doing that sandbagging, I tell you what, that's when you really step back and you realize that kids are the ones. It's one thing for an adult to get in a car and drive and sandbag. That's kind of what we do. But when you look up and you see kids, and little kids, thinking they can lift this sandbag that I can barely lift, that's when you really know that, you know, between Eureka and Fenton and anybody else who went and did sandbagging, that's when you're really proud to be a member of a community. So I appreciate, you know, everything everybody did, so thank you.
And how many students from, you know, all over the district that were just stepping up. I mean, I didn't hear of one single person that was like, hey, this is amazing, we get a day off, and who just took that for granted. I mean, I was helping out at a house in Fenton one night, and they needed a lot of help and requested overnight help. And sure enough, here come the Summit students, and they would just walk in the door, nod their head, head downstairs, and get to work. I mean, nobody was looking for anything other than, when do you need me? It was cool.
Pretty neat too to see on Sunday when the wrestling room, they had just established their new mats on the floor in the wrestling room, and we told them, you know, told Cleve, need to get the coaches and clear this out. The coaches showed up, and the Eureka wrestling team showed up, and so did the Summit wrestling team, and so did the Lafayette wrestling team. These are rivals in a wrestling room rolling up their opponent's mats and getting them out. So that's what I meant by that sense of community that just was everywhere and made you think, you know what, the world's a pretty okay place.
Almost a relief to not hear about everything else that's going on.
I think another one, Green Pines was on television because they collected water and all kinds of things. And I'm sure they weren't the only school in Rockwood that did that, but they got some of the limelight, and it was very, very well received from everything I saw. So it's nice to see that the district does pull together, and that's what Rockwood is.
Board comments? One of the consent agenda item. I need a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda items as submitted.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on those items? All right. All right.
Yeah, we have one gift for this. Princeton Vision, monetary amount $3,500. The purchase of safety eclipse glasses. The purchase of the eclipse safety glasses to be worn by staff and students to protect their eyes from the solar eclipse. Mark it down, August 21st, 2017. I don't know what day of the week that is. Anybody know?
Monday.
Okay.
What?
August the
Yeah,
21st.
Monday. Yeah.
I know it's 4 days before my anniversary. That's all I know.
Oh, 4 days after my birthday. 5 days.
Wow.
Any other discussion of the consent agenda items?
26.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Are there any abstentions?
I need to abstain. 7.10. I'm a family member on there. Summer Academy.
Under the regular agenda items, I need a motion to proclaim May 10th, 2017 as National School Nurse Day in the Rockwood School District.
Move.
A motion and a second. I think Dr. Harris and Amy Ware are going to join us, or not? Dottie? As we often do, when we have a proclamation of this sort, we ask a board member to read it out loud. And since we haven't picked on Tammy yet, we asked Tammy if she would do that this evening.
We'd love to. Proclamation National School Nurse Day, May 10th, 2017. Whereas children are the future, and by investing in them today, we are ensuring our world for tomorrow. And whereas families deserve to feel confident that their children will be cared for when they are at school. And whereas all students have a right to have their health needs safely met while in the school setting. And whereas children today face more complex and life-threatening health problems requiring care in school. And whereas school nurses have served a critical role in improving public health and in ensuring students' academic success for more than 100 years, and whereas school nurses address the home and community factors, for example, social determinants, that impact students' health, and whereas school nurses are professional nurses that advance the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievements of all students by serving on the front lines and providing a critical safety net for our nation's most fragile children. And whereas school nurses act as a liaison to the school community, families, and healthcare providers on behalf of the children's health by promoting wellness and improving health outcomes for our nation's children. And whereas school nurses support the health and educational success of children and youth by providing access to care when children's cognitive development is at its peak. And whereas school nurses are members of school-based teams, for example, School Health Services 504, IEP, Disaster Emergency Planning, to address the school population, and whereas school nurses understand the link between health and learning and are in a position to make a positive difference for children every day, therefore be it resolved that the National Association of School Nurses celebrates and acknowledges the accomplishments of school nurses everywhere and their efforts of meeting the needs of today's students by improving the delivery of health care in our schools, and offers gratitude for the nation's school nurses who contribute to our local communities by helping students stay healthy, in school, and ready to learn, and keeping parents and guardians at work not just on this National School Nurse Day, but at every opportunity throughout the year. Now therefore, I, the Governor of the State of Missouri, do hereby proclaim May 10th, 2017 as School Nurse Day in Missouri and commend its observance to all citizens. Now therefore, we, the Rockwood School District Board of Education, do hereby proclaim May 10th, 2017 as School Nurse Day and commend its observance to all citizens.
That's one of the longer ones we've had.
All under the leadership of the State School Nurse of the Year, of course.
Of course.
School Nurse Administrator. But you're a nurse.
Right.
So.
There was somebody else that was just the regular school.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
She's in Parkwood.
Well, thank you very much for all the nurses do. It's coincidental but fitting that tonight we'll also be approving a 3-year contract for the nurses in the district. It's nice that turned out very well, and thank you for all that you do for our kids. Thanks.
I think it's important to, and as I've seen nurses, I worked with nurses for probably 40 years, and the change in the things that nurses do these days compared to what they did when I started in education, it's exponentially much more now. And as an average parent or even a teacher or student, they don't see what the nurses do throughout the day. If they did, they'd be worn out just watching what the nurses do. So congratulations to the nurses. You're always on my team. Thank you.
The motion on the floor is to approve the proclamation of National School Nurse Day. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. That passes. Next, we're going to have an informational discussion, as we often do when we have new board members. Lisa Stump is here to talk about the Sunshine Law and kind of some of the do's and don'ts, and it's probably a good refresher for the rest of us as well. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, we do this, I think, every 3 years or so. And I will tell you, for those of you that have been around for a while, there hasn't been a lot of change in the last 3 years, so it's not going to be a lot new, but it is always good to have a refresher. So please, also, as I go through it, if you have any questions, just let me know. First of all, we'll just talk in general. The Missouri Sunshine Law governs 3 different things. It governs votes, it governs records, and it governs meetings, and those are the main things, and we'll talk about each of those as we progress. But overriding is the public policy that's stated in the law itself, which says that records, meetings, and votes of the public governmental body, in this case the district, are always open to the public unless otherwise provided. So the presumption is that they're open. And the law itself also says that it should be liberally construed and the exceptions strictly construed, which leads to the conclusion that if in doubt, it's open. So I want to talk about meetings first. A meeting is defined in the Sunshine Law as one of a public governmental body where public business is discussed or public policy formulated. So really, you have to ask two questions. First of all, who is meeting? And second of all, what is the purpose of the meeting? As far as who is meeting, the Sunshine Law says that the public governmental body is meeting if a quorum of the board is present. So if you have less than a quorum, you don't need to be worrying about the Sunshine Law. However, do recall that committees, board-appointed committees of themselves can be public governmental bodies. So if you have meetings of a board committee, that is subject to the Sunshine Law. And likewise, if you have 3 board members present who happen to be the 3 board members that are on that committee, you need to be conscious of that. But generally, it's a quorum requirement. The other exception to that is that it doesn't apply to groups that are less than a quorum unless there's determined that there is a purposeful violation to use that to go around the Sunshine Law. So you do have to worry if there is an occasion where you're purposely trying to avoid the Sunshine Law by having small groups and small meetings. So the other part is whether it's a public meeting or not depends on what's being discussed. And so it has to be one where there's a meeting where you are talking about public business, and it does not include an informal gathering for ministerial or social purposes when there's no intent to void the law. So if you all are having a social get-together and you're not talking about board business, you don't need to worry about the Sunshine Law. Let's talk about electronic meetings for a minute. It also, the Sunshine Law states that it includes any meetings that are held by conference call, video conference, internet chat, or internet message board. And what I want to talk about for a little bit is an email discussion. We're going to talk about emails as far as being public records later on, but now I want to talk about emails and whether they can constitute a meeting or not. There is case law, not in Missouri, but in some other states that has come out and said that a public governmental body can, in fact, have a meeting through email, depending upon the circumstances. So the courts have looked at things like what is the timing of the emails, what's the purpose and intent, who's included. Of legal concern to me would be emails where where more than a quorum is on the emails, and there's kind of a conversation that gets going, and it gets going within a short amount of time, and there's a lot of reply to all going back and forth. That's where you need to be concerned. And if you're sitting at your computer and you're seeing this going on, as you're writing, if there is a quorum, and you're sending something and then somebody else is sending something back where it really feels like it's a conversation, then that's where you need to be concerned that, oh, are we starting to have a meeting here? And if so, then someone should make the effort to stop that. And a lot of times how that can be stopped is, we caution against using the reply to all feature when you've got a discussion, or let's say if Dr. Cano sends an email to the full board, and rather than replying to all, perhaps you can just reply to Dr. Knost and just try to limit it in that way, because there can be concern if you all are having a large email discussion. So that's the main thing I wanted to point you out on that.
So would you say texting would be under that exact same umbrella? Text messages?
I would. Texting is... as far as the meeting component, yes. Texting is it's the unknown right now as far as the Sunshine Law is concerned. I would say if you're going to text, again, text with less than a quorum. Don't text with the full board. If Dr. Knost sends something to all of you, reply just to him. I would apply the same standard. Something interesting on texting, and we'll talk about this till we get to records, is that right now it's also kind of unclear whether text are public records or not, because a lot of them aren't retained, and that still hasn't been solidified. But I will tell you that there's a bill right now in front of the legislature that would make text specifically part of the Sunshine Law and part of public records. So
Missouri or federal?
in Missouri. Now, we got a week left, and I don't know if it'll get passed, but I think that's, you know, as technology evolves, and not you all, of course, but as other members of public government, other public officials may find ways to try to avoid the Sunshine Law, then eventually, usually the legislature will catch up with technology to make it clear that it applies. So we'll see what happens with the texting. So let's talk for a minute about notices, but I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on this because Janet does most of this and she knows what she's doing. But there are certain things that have to be included in a notice and when it has to be posted. One important thing is that, you know, you do have to have a tentative agenda. It doesn't have to have a lot of details, but you do need to let the public know generally what's going to be discussed. And also the other thing to remember is that even for closed meetings, she has to post a tentative agenda, at least identifying what the topics are going to be. So let's talk about whether a meeting can be closed and to what extent. The statute provides 23 different reasons under which meetings can be closed. And one thing for you all to remember is that the Sunshine Law permits things to be closed. Never do you have to close a meeting for a certain reason. If there's a reason you want to have a public discussion, you can. However, I will tell you that for most of these reasons, there's a basis behind why they exist. So there's a reason why they generally are done in closed session. So I listed some of the main ones, such as legal actions. Anytime you have not only litigation that's already been filed, but anytime there's a possibility of a claim or potential litigation, that can be discussed in closed session. Anytime we come and give legal advice, that can be done in closed session. Another common exception is the individually identifiable personnel records. Anytime you have a meeting talking about specific personnel, that would be entitled to be closed. As far as the records are concerned, names, positions, salaries, and lengths of service are open. The other exception that's frequently used is a meeting which would talk about hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting particular employees, where you're going to talk about personal information about that employee. However, the Sunshine Law requires that any final vote or final decision be made public within 72 hours after the employee is informed. And another common one is real estate matters, but those do become public upon the execution of the transaction, and sealed bids, proposals, and documents related to a negotiated contract can be closed. Common one for the district is anything having to do with scholastic probation, expulsion, graduation of identifiable individuals. And then finally, the Sunshine Law has an exception for any records which are otherwise protected from, or meetings that are protected from disclosure by law. And this is where the FERPA exception fits in. As you know, that restricts student information, and so that's why that information can be closed. When you go into closed session, as you know, the vote to close has to be made in open session, and the reason for the exception, whether it's personnel, legal, whatnot, should also be stated. The next point is important, especially for those of you that are new to the board. Any board member may vote against going into a closed meeting if you do not believe there's a proper reason or it's being properly closed. You're entitled to vote against that. Should you choose to do that, you are allowed to fully participate in the closed meeting. However, if in the event there's a lawsuit or anything else challenging it, you would not suffer liability because you voted against it. So that's something that's an option for you all. And then, as you know, when you're in closed session, the Sunshine Law requires that all votes in closed session be made by roll call. And just be aware, as we talked about, some of the votes, even though the discussion is closed and the votes taken in closed session, they can become public at a later date. So that's meetings. I want to switch and talk about records for a minute. Yes.
Before you do that, just because we've dealt with this before, just to kind of reiterate and refresh, on real estate contracts, the wording is that word execution.
Right.
And we've discussed before that there's some gray there, but we interpret that as execution, meaning when that would be a closed sale, or when the deal would actually close, not when the board would vote to necessarily purchase real estate or what have you, but when it actually closed, because obviously there's concerns that becomes public information and whatnot. So
Right, that's correct. And there is kind of a gray area there, but we think that that's the proper interpretation, because the effect of the Sunshine Law, the reason for that exception is so that the district and those involved get the best deal on the property, and until it's actually closed, if something would happen, it would affect your negotiating ability in the next case, so yes. Okay, records. Records are defined in the Sunshine Law as anything that's retained by or of a public governmental body. So again, we're talking about a quorum. We're talking about records of a committee. And in this case, which is important, we're also talking about records of the superintendent. There's a case that specifically says that because the superintendent's office is created by statute, he himself is a public governmental body for the purposes of the Sunshine Law, and records that he retains are subject to public record request. And the reason that's important for you all to know too is because for you all, it's a quorum. So an individual of a record of one individual board member is not a public record. But for instance, if it's an email that you send to the superintendent, even though it's just you, one board member, that could become a public record depending on the circumstances. So just be conscious of that. It also includes records of the district which are maintained by private contractors on behalf of the district. So this came out of an Attorney General's opinion. Before then, an entity would maybe try to avoid the Sunshine Law by having its contractor hold on to the records rather than keeping them in the city or the district's offices. And the Attorney General said, no, you can't do that. If they're your contractor, those records that your contractor has related to your business are public records also. So again, even if it's a public record, doesn't mean that it has to be disclosed. There's 23 exceptions, so whether or not you would release it into response to requests would depend on the subject matter, and if it addresses any of those subject matters, it could be closed. The Sunshine Law does say, however, that you need to close it only to the extent that you have to. So, for instance, if it's an email that the board has, and it has some personnel information in it, but it has some discussion about the rooms at Eureka High School, and somebody asks for that public record, makes a public record request, we would redact the personnel discussion, but provide the email that has the open public discussion in it. So there are procedures that have to be followed for public record request, and again, Janet is on the ball with all of these. I guess it's just important for you all to know, especially the new board members, if you get a request as an individual board member, Janet is the custodian for the district, and it should just be forwarded to her, and she knows how to respond if needed. And request, in general, should only go to her as custodian in the first place. But generally, there's, go ahead.
I mean, when I first got on the board, we would send everything like custodian of record too. Do you guys remember that? Or is that, so now it's just automatically?
Yeah, it's on the,
Am I
on the
the
next.
Am I the one who
No,
remembers that?
no, because look,
Teachers have to do that?
when we go to emails,
Yeah.
for emails for you all and talking about whether they're public, see number 2 there? The Sunshine Law requires that members who electronically transmit messages relating to public business must concurrently transmit the message to the member's office computer or the custodian of records. So that's why originally you had custodian of records on there. Now, what the Attorney General has found is that as long as you're using your Rockwood email address, that's sufficient. So I think in the beginning, it was always added. Now you're using your Rockwood email address, so that's taken care of. But that is important to know. If for some reason you would send an email to, let's say, the board from your home email address, then you should copy Janet on it also, so it's in the system. If you're not using your Rockwood address, but you're doing Rockwood business, then you should copy the custodian of records. So back to making requests, the only other thing that I wanted to point out to you all is, sometimes you'll get requests for public records that are not documents that you have. People will say, well, I want a compilation of all the high schools and how many kids in this school do this and how many kids. A public record request only applies to records that are in existence. So we provide what information we have on that, but we're not required to make certain reports or conduct research for things that we don't have. We provide them what documents we have that are responsive to the request. The other thing you all should know, because this, depending on how many requests you can, the fee itself is set forth in the statute, and it's still limited to 10 cents a page. It has been for years. And then also you can charge for clerical staff time and the actual rate of research time. So emails, we pretty much already talked about. So that's really it. The only other thing I wanted to point out is where these things are within your policies too. We have the meetings are governed by the policies and regulations listed there. And then the record policy is 1450. And then when you get into student records, it's kind of a whole nother deal, but I just wanted to point out to you that that's 2400. And this is important, though. This is fines and liabilities for violation of the Sunshine Law. The court the statute set forth several different classifications. First is there can be a purposeful violation, in which case there can be a civil penalty of up to $5,000 in costs, and the court can order attorney's fees. There can be, you can knowingly violate the Sunshine Law, in which case there's a fine of up to $1,000, and the court can award costs and attorney's fees. But really, it's up to each court would decide the extent to which they believe fines should be awarded. And there were a couple cases in the last year that have been on this knowingly and purposeful. And there's one that's kind of interesting when the court tried to distinguish the difference, because they're very similar when you knowingly and purposely violating. And they said like a knowingly violation would be, for example, when you got a public record request and you knew that you should provide the documents, but maybe you're a small city and you just didn't have the resources and it was way too broad, and so you just didn't comply. That would be a knowing violation, not really necessarily a purposeful violation, which is when you really have some intent to violate the law. So the other thing that is important, though, the court can choose to void any action taken should it want to do so. So if you would conduct a meeting that is in violation of the Sunshine Law and you vote to take an action at that meeting, the court could choose to void that action. So I think that's it. You have questions, and then I am going to provide you, I don't know if you people who've been around have one. This is the new one, the Missouri Sunshine Law book from the Attorney General's website. It's a great resource if you just have a question for you to pull out and look at, or if any of your constituents do too. Do you guys have any questions?
I am curious. you see on television quite often where these local municipalities would be small municipalities. They seem to violate the sunshine law rather frequently. I don't hear much about school districts. And am I just dreaming that school districts really do some of that, quite a bit of it, or not?
I don't think I think your conclusion is correct. I don't think school districts get as many requests as some municipalities do, so I think that's part of it. The other thing is school district organizations such as MSBA, and they provide training for all the board secretaries on the Sunshine Law. So I don't think it's as common.
Talking about the fees a while ago too, you can charge those fees, but you don't have to. If I remember right, we had the option a few years ago, and
That's correct.
I'm not sure what we did on it. I know we had the option of charging the fees, but I'm not sure we did.
That's correct.
Okay.
Our policy really on fees has always been, if it's in my opinion, in past situations, sometimes it can give the appearance when you start enforcing the fees that you're trying to deter or keep people from pursuing. But really, what we do, if it's a rather easy thing to get together, we're not usually going to ask for it. But if it ends up being a significant amount of time, then it's appropriate to do so, because it's taxpayer dollars that somebody's typically doing something else. And that clarification that Lisa gave is an important one, that we're not required to create anything. It's just to collect, gather. Xeroxing is a lot of times after pulling the information, Xeroxing. But we charge when it really is appropriate to charge, but when we can waive it, we do. I think it's an appropriate thing to do.
The only other clarification question I have is, you touched on a social gathering is exempt. So I would assume that, say, if 4 of us live in the same vicinity and wanted to carpool to an engagement that's farther away, like graduations, that would be acceptable.
I think that is acceptable under there, but I would caution you just not to talk about board
Right.
business.
Yep.
We now have a situation where the board president and I, when we talked about postponing last week's meeting to this week, he and I kind of had this realization all of a sudden. It's like, well, could we get a quorum together? And we thought, well, there's a quorum that lives in Fenton. They could do it on the Fenton Island, and we didn't even.
I'm not sure how that happened.
We could
It's,
have done that. Randy and I would vote in, wouldn't we?
That's right.
What was that?
Keith and I would vote in, wouldn't we?
Bowden.
I thought we'd protest. We didn't want to have that meeting.
We digress. Lisa, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right, the next item is negotiated contract, and I think Dr. Reveille and Dottie Barton and Maureen Conley going to join us. Need a motion to approve the negotiated agreement between the Rockwood School District and the Rockwood Association of Nurses. This 4-year agreement shall be effective July 1st, 2017 through July 30th of 2021. We need that motion.
Moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for reviewing this tonight. I'm here with Dottie, who we had a outstanding process that really came up with as you see in front of you, a 4-year agreement, which in my 3 years of negotiating with employee group is, from my personal opinion, was probably the most successful collaborative group that we've worked with, and it's the longest agreement that we've come up with. And we owe a lot of that success to Dottie, who's sitting right here, and Maureen, and the team, and of course Tim Rooney, who's in the back. Tim Rooney helped us with working through all of the numbers. So it definitely was a collaborative process, and we're proud of what's in front of you tonight.
I agree wholeheartedly. This was, some of you know I've done this a couple of times before. We accomplished some things this time that we've been looking for quite a while. The process itself has only gotten more positive and more positive over time. So we appreciate Dr. Reveille's perspective and her, I don't know, the way you do things is so much more positive, is there a different word for that? We had a good time. It was a good collaborative process that accomplished not only the compensation part of it, but some other really significant things for us. So I don't think that it's too much to say that one of the most important things that we accomplished this time is not even in that document in front of you, but we talked about issues and needs in the district that opened the dialogue for a collaborative process going forward outside of this discussion of numbers and dollars, which goes on and on and on. So I'm personally and professionally very, very pleased with this longer agreement. What that's going to do for us as nurses and for you as a board and for all of us as a district is to let us refocus those energies in that time on things that are more relevant to our students' success. Everything that we do in school health services, like every other aspect of public education, is only more complicated and exponentially more complex as time goes on. And I promise you I didn't write that proclamation. That's the kind of words I could write, but wow, that was long. But it did a pretty good job if you read between the lines. It is not school nursing as it was a decade ago, much less a couple decades ago. So I personally am very pleased. We had a great team of nurses who had not participated before. Finally, going to leave somebody who can pick this back up again in 4 years and move forward with it. I also want to acknowledge Tim Rooney's efforts on our behalf. Tim's magical spreadsheets are just an amazing tool.
Magical spreadsheets.
They're magical.
What that does is free all of us to focus on what's behind the numbers, because the numbers themselves are so solid that you can, with a keystroke, look at a scenario and see if it will do what you want to accomplish. So I appreciate that more than I can tell you, because spreadsheets are not my strong suit. So.
And we have a couple team members here I want to recognize. Amy Weir and Terry Harris served on the team. We had several other that were coming last Thursday night, and then the meeting got changed, so they couldn't make it.
Four.
Shows up there.
Pretty amazing. That's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
I'd like to commend the group. I was at a few of us were the opening evening and the presentation evening. I'm not sure what the right words were. And one of the things that came up was that I didn't know about was that at the beginning of the school year, the Herculean effort to gather all the immunization records together that you have to do all right then, within a very short period of time. And then I take it that's something that didn't actually go in the agreement, but it's something that we didn't know about, or I didn't know about. I would encourage that if the agreement's not going to be renewed for another 4 years, that would be a healthy group to get together, say in 2 years, and talk about what are those things that are impeding your process, because that doesn't necessarily need to be an agreement issue, but that's something the district, by knowing about it, could do a better job of. And I know that all the folks that were here were there that night, and I was sitting there going, well, let's just do it.
Right. So the good news on that, to your point, is that Terry Harris has already made that happen. Before we were even finished, we were already in discussions to figure out how we can take the needs of the health services staff to our administrators in our buildings and get the support that's so essential at the beginning of the year. So that discussion is already underway. We were invited to interact with principals at both meetings, at both levels. That happened, that has already begun. In addition to that, Dr. Harris is formulating a task force with representatives from our association and Amy and from their team to look at a health services staffing model, which is another issue that we brought for discussion that is not in the agreement. So both of those things, that need for support for clerical and organizational tasks, which is very real, and you're right, it was hidden from not only you, but some of the people that we work for and with. And this idea of, unfortunately, our state does not provide any guidance to you for how to staff for health services. In some states, that's controlled by their DESE, just as class sizes are recommended for teachers. Since that's lacking at the state level, Rockwood is undertaking to create a model for ourselves. That's the kind of thing that has come out of this process that will be able to happen on a collaborative level over these next couple years when we can stop looking at the salary schedule for a minute and figure out what we need to do that's best for kids. So those two aspects were issues that we brought, that the process opened the discussion, and that will be ongoing in the planned meetings over the whole course of that. of that agreement. And to me, I mean, I think what you're seeing here is just about pages.
Did you say the state does not mandate staffing sizes? That was news to me. I didn't know that. I thought they did.
They don't. We have some great ideas for you.
So we could have just one nurse in the district, and she could just go around. Oh.
Jeez.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
Just
She's
kidding.
going to throw something out.
Legally,
Right.
the answer to that is yes. Legally, you could.
Right.
I am
Like,
surprised.
I think the room would be a little more full if we brought that change.
And this superintendent would not be here.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we all know what we need to do. We all know it's
That
just
would
a
be
matter of
alone.
figuring out
Right.
how to put our heads and our hearts together and figure out how to best utilize every resource that we have to cover as many of the needs as we can come up with. So that will happen.
That was a
And that's-
backward way to get at the idea that what Terry and all of you did that night was very evident before we left that night, that we don't have to put that in here. We just need to solve the problem. And I thought that was a great move forward, and to hear that you're doing the other ones is also good to hear. So
Which is what salary negotiations and employee negotiations are like with Katie Rebele, is what is the problem and how can we solve it together? And I have to tell you that is incredibly refreshing and validating.
Katie, where did you go to high school? I'm curious.
are there any other questions regarding the motion on the table, which is to approve the nurse contract?
No, but on a side note, my son came home and said, "Mom, did you know I had whatever shot in 2002? I was like, "What?" He goes, "It's all on Infinite Campus. I just found my medical record."
Ooh,
Like, I don't know why you're looking for it, but it's
That's
pretty
great.
cool. Yeah.
That's great.
Any other discussion on the item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you for all your hard work. All right, I think Mr. Rooney and Mr. Friend are going to join us. We need a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts between $7,500 and $150,000 as submitted.
Move.
Second.
A motion and a second. And just for the record, we are still talking about the bond issue from 15.
The first item up for approval is basically a concrete package at two locations. That's Lafayette High School and Ridge Meadows. This is being funded out of our cycle maintenance in bond issue 15. Basically, it's a concrete repair around the pool area at Lafayette High School and a stairwell that leads down to the bus lot. And then concrete repair in the front of Ridge Meadows main entrance and around the rear where their dumpster area is.
Do you have other schools you're going to have to work through also, or is this the ones that are the worst right now?
These are the worst that have been prioritized right now, and this is actually, we're getting to the point where we're wrapping up our cycle maintenance for asphalt repair throughout the district, and then we'll reprioritize again next summer.
The original concrete steps at Lafayette?
Yes.
Whoa, 20, or whatever it is. Yeah, almost 30 years.
The only item under this one, or is there another one?
It's the only one.
Okay. Any questions on this bond issue purchase? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That passes, thank you. The next one, we always say this, not completely arbitrarily, but we separate items under 150 from items over 150, and we collect the ones under that as a group, and tonight there was just the one. But anything over $150,000, we take them one at a time as separate motions. So we will have 5 of those this evening. So the first one, I need a motion to approve the bond issue purchase and related contract over $150,000 from Byrne and Jones Construction for district-wide pavement replacement and athletic field improvement, package number 3. And second. Can you tell us about this one?
Okay, this is the second large asphalt replacement package that we've brought for approval. Recently, this is the first one we brought was for the Fenton Quadrant. This one is more in this geographic area. It actually includes the admin annex where we're at, Ellisville, Gegee, and LaSalle.
We have several of these tonight, if I remember right, in different packages. Is that right?
Correct.
And this isn't just asphalt, but it's mainly asphalt.
This particular package is all asphalt.
Okay.
Questions on this item? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, that carries. The next one, I need a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Dickinson Hussman Architects for architectural and engineering services for the STEM Lab renovation project.
Moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you tell us about this one?
Yes, this is actually an increase for Dickinson Hussman. They are the architect that is engaged in our STEM lab projects included in bond issue 15. As we've gone through the design process at the locations, it became increasingly complicated. The scope of work actually increased at some of the locations above and beyond what we originally thought it would be. But those are the items that we thought we needed to address in order to make the facility what everybody wanted it to be. Typically, your architect is paid a percentage of what the construction costs are for the project. And obviously, as the scope increased, so did the cost of the project. This is to adjust their fee structure to align a little better with the original percentage that we agreed with them on.
These become change orders?
No, these are not change orders.
Well, how are they not? Because you're adding $96,000.
The architects are actually under an AIA contract with the district. They're not under a construction contract. This is basically a extension of services under that contract.
This has been building something, and it was an additional $96,000. That would have been a change order, probably. Not the architects, but the actual physical part of that.
Correct. If
Okay.
this, that is absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, thanks.
The AIA form is a form you use for contracting services, not construction, and it doesn't fall by the same rules as a change order, but it is in effect adding additional construction service or design services for the district, so.
Where does that money come out of the bond issue? I mean, it all comes out of the bond issue, but did you have money left in the bond issue that you could use for this?
It's a combination of a couple of things. One is after we sell the bond issues, those balances and some income. Also, all the issues upon what the bases those interests on sometimes the sale.
The questions on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The next one is a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Ideal Landscape Corporation for district-wide athletic field asphalt and concrete repair.
So move.
Second.
Okay.
That says that's only at Wild Horse, though.
That's correct. This is for Wild Horse Elementary only. It is a major field renovation. That's one of the last elementary school fields we have that does not have a walk track around it and is not irrigated. So this is a pretty large project that will provide both of those for Wild Horse.
How old is Wild Horse? Because that was when that was put in, wasn't it? In the original Wild Horse?
Yes, it's the original construction.
20?
You're going to test me. I think it's about 20 years.
This building's 21.
Okay.
All right, any discussion on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Need a motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Muni Outdoor Services Incorporated, doing business as Muni Green Care Professionals for district-wide athletic field asphalt and concrete repair.
Moved.
Have a motion and a second. What's this one for?
These are two other field renovation projects at Rockwood Valley and Werther Elementary. I will point out Werther Elementary is actually going to be funded completely by community ed and facility usage, so they do a great job at reinvesting into the facilities that they use often. But Rockwood Valley will be coming out of the bond issue 15 cycle maintenance money for athletic fields. Same type of project, field renovation, irrigation, regrading, and sod.
Questions on this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That passes, thank you. One more. Motion to approve the bond issue purchases and related contracts over $150,000 from Trinity 3 Technology for purchase of Chromebooks and computer carts for elementary schools and one-to-one technology program.
Move.
Second.
All right, and we changed people.
Good evening.
Welcome.
This purchase is to allow us to continue with our one-to-one program. And also to continue with our refresh of computing devices at the elementary level. The change is that we're switching from Dell direct purchasing to Trinity 3 technology. And the reason for this is because they're Dell Chromebooks, they're the exact same Chromebooks, but their warranty is a much better value for us. They provide a 4-year warranty as opposed to a 3-year warranty with unlimited major breaks. Dell only allows 1 major break per year. So we have had some kids who have had more than 1 break this year, and we've absorbed that cost, and it hasn't been significant, but I do see as we add more students to the mix that that could become a cost that this will allow us to avoid. So all in all, the cost is actually comparable to buying Dell Direct, but we get much more value. They also include a loss or theft protection for up to 2% of our pool. So we'll be purchasing 5,400 devices this year from them. And I have done some research and worked with some districts in Missouri and other states that are using them, and they have been highly complimentary of their services and their return process for getting devices repaired.
I keep bragging about Rockwood's going to one-on-one to other people, and as soon as I say that, they say, well, who are you providing them to now? And I don't have an answer. What grade levels, or what is the scope of what we're providing?
Currently, we have Chromebooks in our 6th grade and specific language arts classes at the high school, ALARP and reading strategies program. And this coming year, we're going to expand that to all freshmen, which is why we're purchasing significantly more devices this year than we did, or for the coming year than we did for this year.
6th grade again.
6th grade again.
So now 7th and 9th and 6th.
So 6th, 7th graders at the middle school will have one-to-one devices, and then all 9th graders at the high school, plus students that were in those specific language arts classes will have theirs.
Project another year down the road, we'll have 6, 7, and 8.
6th, 7th, and 8th.
9 and 10.
And 9, 10. Mm-hmm.
So will we not ever provide it lower than 6th grade? Or do we know?
Yeah, we will. We're not exactly positive how much in the middle school, and also we continue to look at what's appropriate. We've done some experimenting with tablets in the primary grades. We're not even sure that at this point that, you know, one-to-one may be a little bit different for those grades. It may not be that they're taking those computers home with them, but that we still have a ratio of one-to-one. So our biggest intent, you know, from the first time we started talking about this, has been for our secondary schools, and then to start inching into probably starting with 5th grade would be the first thing that we would do with the elementaries, and work backward to see where we go with that.
Is there any other district close to this size in the states that's taking this on? I know several smaller districts are doing this, but a real large district going one-on-one? Springfield, maybe?
Springfield does have some one-to-one. I'm not sure to the extent, but I know Lee Summit and Liberty are all one-to-one. Wentzville School District is one-to-one at the secondary, or at high school in North Kansas City.
Our area, Melville, is.
And Parkway is also starting one-to-one.
Pattonville?
Yeah, Pattonville.
Pattonville's been one-to-one.
Yeah.
So they're getting more districts, so.
Yes,
good.
there are.
Deb, I have a question. I hesitate to ask this because I think it's obvious, but I want to make sure. So 6th graders are issued a Chromebook, and then they keep that they hang on to that for 7th and 8th
Yes.
grade? Okay.
So the way we're working it this year is the 6th graders receive their Chromebook. They will be able to take them home over the summer. They will bring them back for 7th grade, and they will continue to use that same device. We're hopeful that having that responsibility of taking it home for the summer and being able to use it as they wished over the summer will help them want to, you know, take care of it, and also encourage them to learn to use it and really become more productive with it.
Then at 8th grade,
In eighth grade, what we're looking at right now is taking those devices and using them as push down into the elementary level, and also to keep a repair pool handy.
They'll get a new one in the ninth grade.
They will get a new one when they enter ninth grade.
Is that all in bond issue?
That is in bond issue.
It's been an awesome program. I have a 6th grader who has one, and his 8th grade sister uses it quite a bit too. So she'll be glad to have her own next year, but I mean, he uses it every single day. So, yeah.
I'm really glad to hear that. I've
Yeah.
had a lot of positive feedback from
Yep.
students as well.
And it's docked on my bedroom floor every night at 8 o'clock. So there you go.
That's good.
Your presentation worked.
Thank you.
And contrary to, anytime you go to a one-to-one program, the first discussion that starts happening a lot of times with parents or even staff, these things, they're going to be busted, they're going to lose them, and you do deal with some of that, but at a pretty small scale.
more than adults.
Oh.
Right.
Absolutely. The rate of breakage has not been significant. It's been right where we expected it to be. We're at 1 to 5% depending on the building, and they're usually minor breaks. And to be honest, that's comparable to our staff and to our other student devices. So it's just right in line. Anything else? Thank you.
Questions about this item? The motion is to approve this bond issue purchase. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That passes. Thank you. Next item is the proposed agenda for the May 18th meeting, which is just 1 week away. I don't know if we have that to put up there. We still have a little bit. We did go through the financial items for next week, which are a little bit less than this week because there's only 1 week in between. Nothing earth-shaking in there. But these are the items we're going to have. So if anybody wants to make changes to the agenda, you can. We have to do it at least 24 hours, but we do ask that we try and get them in more like 48 hours ahead of time, just so that we can get the paperwork done and get things on. So if any board member ever wants to add something to the agenda, either contact me or Eric or Janet and bring that up. And usually that's a pretty easy thing to do. Sometimes there's a reason for postponing that to a later meeting so that we can get the information together to do it or something, but it's pretty easy to put on.
Also suggest the new board
Oh.
at least one, just see what you're like.
Yeah, we do. What in general practice, what we've done is about 1 week, on Wednesday before the following Thursday, so it's 8 days before the board meeting. We'll get together and talk about it, and it's at least Eric and myself, and we talk about all the financial items that are going to come up at the next board meeting, and it's just to make sure we understand them, make sure that they're all appropriate. Occasionally, I'll read something and say, "Boy, Eric, that doesn't make any sense," and he goes, "That's just because you're too dumb, Matt," and he explains it, and we move on. Not quite that way, but
Exactly how it happens.
that's how it happens. Every time. That's open to any board member, and I would encourage, especially the newer
It's on my
board.
to-do list in June, as soon as Janet quits filling up my schedule.
Okay.
There are
It's come and see it. Generally, there's nothing really exciting there. There's a matter of, I didn't understand this, or where'd that item come from, or what's that mean? So that when we get to a board meeting, or if somebody asks me ahead of time, I can say that's what that is. It's also helpful, especially for new board members, to sit in on one or two of those things. Usually it's at 4 o'clock Wednesday. That's 8 days before the meeting. Like I said, that was just yesterday. We went through it, and if it's just Eric and I, sometimes we just do it by email back and forth. But if anybody wants to, and open to all 7 board members, of course, we don't want to have a quorum present, so it's 3 board members. And again, we're making no board decisions. We're not setting any policy or anything like that. We're simply reviewing what's going to be on the agenda the following week. So either of you would like, or any board member would like to sit in on one of those meetings, just let Janet know, and we'll make sure that it happens.
Can I ask you a question about that? Are you talking about a set date for board working session, so we're going to try and do a retreat? Is that what you're saying? And then what's that review of October board meeting date?
It's a conflict with MSBA. Again, we have had that in the past.
Oh, that conference?
That's the fall conference, and we probably need to encourage a little more involvement in that.
I agree. When we get to upcoming events, let's talk about that too. Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move on to the future agenda presentations and events to attend. Has everybody, Janet, has everybody sent you the hood and gown information for graduations?
And I'll hit
I have all the gowns except for Tamara's, and I'll be bringing them to the meeting next
Next
Thursday.
okay.
And the
Great.
parking passes, so.
Are there other items, future items? For the new board members, it's 4 nights in a row. You get to shake hands with 2,000 of your favorite 18-year-olds.
More to it.
So it's hard not to get caught up in the excitement of the evening, because for board members, especially if you've done this several years in a row, you know what it is, and you know what you would expect it might become routine, but it doesn't. It's an exciting night. All those kids and all those families are so upbeat about it that you'll find the 4 nights go by pretty quickly. It's exciting to do. So, any other items for future events to talk about this evening?
So,
About the ILC graduation, did you mention that?
Oh, I did not. Thank you.
Yeah, 11 o'clock, the 18th. That's good. Yep. It's on the screen right up there.
Oh.
There's a screen.
Yeah, if you have,
I thought she was trying to report where it is. It's over there.
It's kind of that way.
So is anyone going to the MSBA conference?
Are you talking
June
about
one
fall
of
or
us, or
Ju-
you're
or
talking about
June?
June?
I'm talking about June.
The 3 of us are supposed to.
Who's the 3?
You
Oh,
and I
you.
and Lynn, I think.
Yeah.
We're the delegates.
Me?
Me,
Oh, yeah,
you.
because I'm a delegate.
But
I'm
I-
used to being on
Keith,
this
myself.
conversation. Do you have
Janet?
3 people going to
I haven't
MSBA
decided.
in June?
I haven't said anything.
No, nobody has said anything to me about
It's
June.
coming
so.
up. It's coming up in June
That's
3rd, I
something
think.
to us, though.
June 2nd.
All that information that I keep sending. And then
Well,
there's
Oh, listen to her.
Some of us are so busy,
Well,
we
and then I
just can't
sent something
decide
about the
yet.
delegate meeting to Lynn and Keith and Laura Lee. There was a separate delegate meeting, and I sent just that to the 3, because it was asking for people if they wanted
To
to
reply
represent.
to that?
They were asking us, or you were?
They sent it out saying it was a delegate
What's the-
meeting, and so I
Yes.
sent it to the 3
Well,
delegates.
that's the one before, isn't, is that?
Yes.
And one of them
That's
starts
in
the day
June,
before.
correct?
Pardon me?
That's in June,
Yes.
June 3rd.
No, second. is the-
Second.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The delegates Thursday.
Delegates Saturday, June 3rd at 3:45 PM.
Oh, yeah,
Which is
but you
3
also,
weeks from
there's a
right now, so if we're going to
preliminary
do
on
something, it
the
has to be pretty
Thursday.
quick.
A big one on Friday, Saturday, and you get out Sunday morning after breakfast.
Janet, could you resend out that information to the board
Can.
members? And
like,
they
for
all
the
promise to
30th
pay
time,
attention this time.
I've got a
For
brochure.
Janet.
Did you get a brochure?
Like,
Matt,
no,
can
I
you send
cannot.
flowers to Janet tomorrow?
That's right. We're going to owe her some here.
What'd you say?
Matt's gonna send flowers
I
to
have a
Janet.
brochure if anybody want to look at it.
Janet, you're the best. For public record, for the public record, Janet, you're the best. She really is.
Okay.
I'm not just saying
All right. Any other
Thank you.
future items to discuss tonight? Any other items at all, Dr. Knost?
This week at Summit, right?
Yes.
I will not be there. My granddaughter is graduating from kindergarten, so I will be there.
That's important. It's important.
You've been on the board for 2 weeks. 1 week they couldn't have a meeting because of.
We were flooded.
Yeah, and then
Anywho.
next week, I understand.
I know.
Okay, I'm not missing her graduations.
It's an award night, right, at Summit?
Yes.
Do we know who's presenting?
Jamie and Laura Lee.
Why do we always pair you 2 guys up together? You
When-
drive together? And this is like,
Dr. Knost, do you have
Oh,
anything else to put this evening?
I do have one thing that I failed to mention at the beginning of the board meeting tonight, just really quick. We did approve an administrator in closed session tonight. So Dr. Kim Allwood was approved as the new administrative intern for Baldwin Elementary School effective July 1, 2017. Dr. Allwood currently serves as an elementary teacher in the Kirkwood School District. From 09 to 13, she was a teacher at Ridge Meadows Elementary School here in Rockwood. And she also worked in Rockwood Summer Academy. During her time in Rockwood, she participated in our Administrative Leadership Development Program, and since then has become a launch lead teacher for Project Lead the Way. Dr. Allwood earned a doctorate in education from Maryville University and a master's degree in educational administration from Lindenwood University. Her bachelor's degree in elementary education is from the University of Missouri St. Louis. It's great to bring another good one home, and we're excited to have Dr. Allwood join us in July.
All right. I think we've come to the end of the agenda here. Anything else any board member would like to add? Then we will adjourn. Thank you for coming.
She great talking.
There you go.
I said I'll do it. Felt like we
Hey.
hear the
sorry.